Okay, for the daily check on the CAFS system on this Spartan ERV pumper, inside this enclosure under this diamond plate is the sump for the CAFS system. That's the pressure vessel that holds the air when the rotary screw compressor spools up. The check on that has to be done when it's cold before you engage the pump for the rest of your daily checks. When the compressor's engaged, it spreads the air throughout the system, which then spreads the oil throughout the system, and you can't get an accurate reading unless you do it before you've engaged the pump. Down here, there's a hex plug with a glass window in it. The oil should be right in the middle of that glass. If it's not, there's an 1 7/8" wrench. At the moment it's under the pump. It's in the engineer's compartment in the pull-out tray. It'll probably move to the station eventually and be kept with the oil. This wrench takes a cap off right here. It says Vanguard on top of it. This is where you fill the oil. Okay, arrive on scene, or you're beginning your pump check. To engage your pump, come up, place your transmission in neutral, pull the PP1 valve to set your parking brake. This truck is different from the trucks we've traditionally had in our fleet. Those have been split shaft pumps with a pump transmission that require you to engage the transmission once you've engaged the pump. This is a PTO pump running off the transmission. You flip up this red cover, flip the toggle switch, your pump is now engaged. You'll get the indication here. You'll feel a quiver as things engage throughout the truck. You'll get a green light that says pump engaged. You get another green light that says okay to pump. Because this pump is different, it runs off of PTO, we do have the ability to pump in motion. It does not meet the NFPA parameters for pump and roll, so they don't label it as such. There's another light over here that says pump, okay to pump in motion. So if we were to drive, we could still operate the pump, and this light would light up once we engage that. If you're going to pump in one place like we do normally in a stationary fashion, you make sure that your brake's set, transmission's in neutral. We're used to engaging our transmission because our pumps have been run off the transmission. That is not the case, and that is a huge safety factor to keep in mind with this truck. In addition to this, the multiplexing system over here, the VMUX system, this screen is called the Vista screen. It has a pump mode operation info screen that will come on when you engage the pump. It tells you your transmission's in neutral, that you've requested pump mode, whether or not your pump is engaged, whether your transmission is in gear or not, and if it's okay to pump. So that gives you information on that. From this point, you can move to the back of the truck and begin pumping. Or in the event that you've finished with your scenario, you're ready to shut the pump down, all you have to do is flip this red cover down, your pump's disengaged, and you're ready to drive. The pump mode information screen now shows transmissions in neutral. All your other requests are off, or switched off, or not engaged. Okay, we went over the engagement of the pump. The PTO has been engaged. The green lights on the dash say pump, we're okay to pump. We've got the brake set, transmission neutral, hop out, set your chock. Come back here to the back compartment. We have, this is not a rear mount pump, this is a rear mount pump panel. The pump is actually just ahead of the left rear wheels. It's a runoff PTO from the transmission. Here we've got our panel. As the engineer walks up, a real simple evolution to get going. We've got air valves for the heat exchanger, air valves for the pump cooler. Go ahead and hit those. Tank to pump valve, hit your preset. It's going to open it up so that you've got water flowing to the pump. At this point, you're ready to go. Your pressure governor, it's not on because we don't have the truck running, but this will open up in pressure mode, ready to go, and then pick your valve. Today we're primarily talking about CAFS. We have 7 discharges on this truck that have CAFS plumbed to them. We actually have 7 that have foam plumbed to them. We've got a Foam Pro system here, as we're used to on our other apparatus. The big difference with this one, it looks a little bit different, but it's the same functions. This one comes on when the pump's engaged. So if you do not want foam, you have to turn it off with this red button. Normal operation, when the pump's engaged, this red LED will be on right under the on indicator. All the other functions are the same as you're used to. You're controlling your percentages up and down with the arrows, bouncing through, flow, total water, your percentage, your total foam used. Those controls are all the ones we're used to. These 7 discharges here, front bumper discharge, the left and right speed lays under the back of the cab, and the 4 pre-connects on the back of the truck, just above and to the right of the pump operator. There's 2 2.5s and 2 3/4. The ones on the rear of the truck are 200 feet. The speed lays are 150. Front bumper is 100 feet. They're all pre-connected. They can all flow water at this point simply by opening the valve. Any one of them at this point will be flowing foam and water because the Foam Pro comes on automatically when you engage the pump. All you have to do at this point is open a valve to have water to whatever discharge you want. If we decided we want CAFS to a discharge, there's a button right here that says CAFS above each of the discharges that are CAFS capable. So if we choose to turn that one on, we'll push the button, the ring around it will light up because it'll show that it has air to it. Right now we don't have the pump running for the sake of the noise for the video. This will light up and you'll have CAFS to that discharge. At any point the water flow to this discharge stops, like you close the nozzle or somebody closes the valve at the pump panel, the air will stop flowing to that automatically. If you run out of foam in the system, the air will stop flowing automatically. We have these valves, these 7 valves, set up with the presets programmed to open part way. Looking at this strip of lights, LEDs, on the valve control, there are 10 LEDs, green ones. Each one of them indicates about a 10% opening of the valve. We have set the presets to about 40% on each of these CAFS capable valves because we're not generally going to want as much water on a CAFS line as we will for a standard water or water and foam concentrate discharge. Close that since it's draining on the floor. If you wanted just water and foam, or just water and foam, you press the open button and hold it. It'll open all the way the full extent of the valve's travel. If you're using CAFS, we're probably going to start with the 40% and limit the amount of water that's going out there until we decide what kind of foam we want to apply to the fire. This will be varied. We're going to change our water depending on how dry we want the foam, how wet we want the foam, whether we're trying to stick it to something or just smother something. Because of CAFS being temperamental as to water and air pressure, we need to balance the water and air pressure. On old trucks, you had to do that manually. That was the pump operator's responsibility. On this one, the system is a form of auto CAFS. It's got an auto balancing valve that matches air pressure and water pressure. We've got a air gauge here that's going to show us what our air pressure is. We have an oil temperature gauge here, and we've got a switch that allows us to increase the pressure capability of the system. Normally this system is going to run about 135 psi. If we flip this switch that's labeled tools or foam, it'll open us up to give us the ability to put out 150 psi. Normally 135 is fine, but you need to milk a little extra out of it. That's where you can get it. Because of the concern with having pressures compatible between air and water, we have set this truck up so that it can run off the tank when you're flowing CAFS rather than off a hydrant. We have the ability to run off a hydrant. You'll hook your steamer line up. There's a 5-inch storage on each side of the truck. Here are the bleeders for them. They should always be left in the open position. Here's the left one, here's the right one. They're quarter turn class 1 valves. Right now, if you hook up a steamer to the right side, when it bleeds the air out, it'll start spitting water on the ground underneath the truck here. Close the valve and your line's bled. You're ready to pump. We've done something on this truck that's different from the rest of ours. Normally we would open that steamer to get water into the pump. In this case, we're going to use water from the pump so that we're starting with a static pressure of 0, and that way we can determine what the final pressure is going to be, and we don't disrupt the CAFS. If we're running a hot hydrant, and we've got a lot of hydrants in this town that are 80 to 120 psi. I think our highest one down near Cougar Country on North Grand is about 133 psi. If we're looking for 65 psi with our CAFS, and we throw a 130 psi hydrant at it, it's going to disrupt our balance badly. We're not going to get good CAFS. By running off the tank, we can determine what our pressure is going to be coming out of the pump, and we can make that balance a lot simpler. So we'll bring our water to the right steamer or left steamer, depending on which side of the truck the plug's on, and then we'll activate a button for auto tank fill, and that will, when your tank volume drops to about 30%, it'll open a valve and automatically refill the tank. That lets us continue to pull off of the tank. That's good to up to about 500 gallons a minute. If we get over that, we're going to start having issues with the amount of foam we're using, and we're also going to be drawing water out of the tank faster than we can replenish it. But for CAFS, that'll give us the best result in our solution. The other option is, if you want to fill that tank sooner, there's a manual tank fill button. You can push and hold it, and it will fill until you release the button. The auto tank fill is going to fill to about a little over 3/4, and it'll shut off so that it does not overflow your tank and doesn't overpressurize things. We've got a high temp oil light for your compressor. If that comes on, your temperature gets too high, it'll shut down the compressor automatically. If you're running the pump and exceed 165 psi, you'll hear the air dump. That's where the relief valve is on the sump on top for the compressor. The compressor is good to 150 cubic feet per minute, 150 psi, which we get by flipping that switch up like we showed you. That'll register on here. There's not a problem with taking the pump above that level if you need to pump water, but if you do, expect your sump to start shedding air because you'll have exceeded the pressure relief valve for the CAFS. One thing I probably should have touched on right at the beginning, as far as the CAFS goes, the compressor engages with the fire pump. So there's just the one switch in the cab, there's nothing else you have to do to engage the compressor. It's going to run any time that the fire pump's engaged, unless you run out of foam, and then it will shut down any air. If it detects that you're out of foam concentrate, the 30-gallon tank is empty, it will cease giving you air until you replenish it, until you replenish the foam. Otherwise, it's pretty much hands-off. You just have to make sure that you don't exceed the amount of, you aren't trying to run more lines than the thing is capable of supplying. This can supply 2.6 gallons a minute, so you'll have to consider that when you're doing your calculations for how much foam you're supplying. We got 7 lines capable of CAFS. We can't run them all at once. We could run some with water and foam, or we can run them without running CAFS. We also have other discharges that we can run. The large diameter discharge, deck gun, and a 2.5 on each side. Those do not have foam to them, so we could be supplying those without affecting our CAFS or our foam usage. But we have the ability to run 7 discharges. You have to pick and choose. We can run several at once, we cannot run them all.